Now, let's talk about powers of I. So it's actually cyclical, right? So the kind of brought up by, do you see a pattern here? The whole point is like, yeah, you should see a pattern. So what's the pattern? Well, you know that I is equal to the square root of -1, which is just I. We also already established that I squared is equal to -1. So now I'm going to break I cubed into I times I squared, which is I times -1, which is -I. I to the fourth, I'm going to break up as I squared times I squared, because remember, if I have a to the x times a to the y, this is a to the x plus y. So 2 times 2 is 4, 1 plus 2 is 3, right? Remember that from developmental math or algebra 1? So I squared is -1 times -1, which is +1, because what's a negative times a negative? Now, with I to the fifth, I'm going to say this is I times I to the fourth, which is I times 1, right? Because I to the fourth we just established is 1. So I to the fifth is I. I to the sixth is just I squared times I to the fourth, right? Because 2 plus 4 is 6. So this, I squared, let's go see, that's -1. I to the fourth is 1, so that's -1. I to the seventh, I'm going to pull out another group of 4, so that leaves me with a cube, because 4 plus 3 is 7. I cubed established above is -I. I to the fourth is 1, so that is again -I. Now I to the eighth, pulling out as groups of I to the fourth, is I to the fourth times I to the fourth, which is 1 times 1, which is 1. So what's the pattern? The pattern is I, -1, where am I? Oh, 1. Oh wait, no, -I, sorry. My brain was jumbling these up. Hello. 1. So it goes in groups of 4. So as groups of 4. So I, -1, I, 1. And then the pattern just starts over. So it's a cycle. So because of this group of 4, we can easily evaluate something like I to the 273rd, right? So I to the 273rd, we take 273 and we divide it by 4. Because this 273 divided by 4 is equal to 68.25. Which means there are 68 groups of 4, which is 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1, 68 times. But what's 1 times itself, no matter how many times? 1. And then the 0.25, so 0.25 is 1/4, right? So that means we go around 68 times as like the cycle, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? 68. And then we would go 1 more. So that means that I've just got I. So basically you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, blah, 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 till you hit, let's see, till you hit all the way to 272. And then here, this is where you would hit 273. So this would be 273. Here, as you're counting through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, you would do that 68 times, because here the 68th time, that would be 272. You have to go 1 more to get your 273rd. So that means you would land on I. So I to the 273rd is I. Some some students like to think of this as kind of like a baseball diamond. So think of your home plate as I to the fourth, right? This is your 1. First base is I to the first, which is I. Second base is I squared, because second base I squared, get it. And that is -1. So I cubed, which would be third base, right? That is -I. So this is I, obviously. So then here, some people like to think of it as the quarters, right? So this is if you have a decimal of 0.25. This is if you have a decimal of 0.5, a decimal of 0.75, and then if you have just a decimal of 0.0, right? So think of it as 1 quarter, 2 quarters, 3, and I mean like an actual 25 cents, 50 cents, 75 cents, $1. So if I've got 25, that means I'm here at first base. Or let's see, if I've got 365 divided by 4, let's not do that example. Oh gosh, I keep doing 4s. Okay, so here's a good one. So what if I want I to the 867? Well, I to the 867, I take 867, I divide by 4. Ignore this part, you're only concerned with the decimal. So that's like 75 cents, so to speak, right? So that's 3 quarters, that's I cubed, that's -I. Ta-da, you're done. That's it, right? So if you think of it in terms of just like groups of 4, should be pretty easy. There are other ways to think of this. If you like a different method, go crazy, go nuts. I don't care. As long as it makes sense to you, that's all that I need from you. Okay, let me see before I pause the video, before I get to complex numbers, if there's anything else. Again, think of it, some people like the baseball diamond, right? Home plate is 0, first base, second base, third base. I to the first, I squared, I cubed.